Hi everyone, we are live. So, welcome to the Vercel Community Live session. We are so excited to have you here. I'm Anshuman, one of your hosts for today, and joining me is Jacob. You have probably seen us hanging around in the community space, answering questions and talking to you. So, it's amazing to connect with you all live here, our customers, our community members. It's awesome to see so many of you joining us here today. Drop a message into the chat to let us know where you are tuning in from. And if you cannot see the chat box, do not worry. You can just sign in from the sign in button on the top of the navigation bar on the Vercel community, and then go to this event and click on I am going. And then you'll see the chat box where you can interact with us, ask any questions. And for those of you watching this on X, you can join us on community.vercel.com and interact and ask questions from the chat box. Yeah, over to you, Jacob.
Yeah, so we're going to see a demo here. At the end of the session, we're going to have some Q&A, so feel free to ask questions in our chat along the way. Please remember to be respectful and follow our code of conduct. I'd like to introduce our speaker here, Andre Eriksson, who is going to show us a little bit about his company, Encore. Andre?
Hey, great to meet you both. Great to see so many people tuning in.
Yeah, it's good to meet you as well. Thanks for coming on for us.
Yeah, I think we should just jump straight in and let's get into it.
Awesome.
So I will share my screen. So quick intro about Encore and what Encore is before we kick into a live demo where we show how it integrates with Vercel. So Encore is a backend framework designed to reduce and remove cloud complexity. So if we think about what you're trying to achieve when you're building a product, really it's you have an idea, you try to create something out of your idea, and then you repeat. And you try to do this as quickly as you possibly can. So if you look at tools like Vercel, they are really excellent at taking this and shortening this feedback loop to, going from hours to minutes when it comes primarily for front-end development. And so Encore is very similar to Next.js and Vercel, but for backend development. And this is why they pair so well together. So what are the problems that we're trying to solve when it comes to dealing with backend development? Well, it's really a couple of things, and it all comes down to the cloud. So reasons why you might choose to use the cloud is things like dealing with scalability, it's dealing with reliability, security, and just the overall breadth of functionality that major cloud providers provide. So these are all good reasons why you might want to use the cloud. However, that doesn't mean that it's particularly easy or productive to use the cloud. And so if we look at how modern backend development is done, it's really about trying to leverage cloud providers and the underlying infrastructure resources that they provide in order to achieve a lot of functionality. So typically that involves, using databases, using pub/sub messaging, object storage for, storing unstructured files and things like that, secrets and scheduled jobs and caching and then the compute aspect itself. And these are all building blocks that you build your backend out of. So a lot of backend development, it almost feels like you're building Legos where you're okay, we get this message from the front end and then we store it in a database and maybe we put it on a queue and then another thing picks it up, and it almost feels like you're doing more plumbing than you're doing actual software engineering. And so this is what Encore is trying to change. Encore consists of two parts. For this presentation, we're mainly looking at the open source TypeScript framework. And that's a framework for building reliable and type-safe backend applications. And then the second part is a cloud platform that then automates deployments to Google Cloud or AWS. And And so why is Encore TS unique? First of all, it's entirely open source. And secondly, there are no NPM dependencies. And it focuses on 3 pillars. It's dealing with infrastructure, it's developer productivity, and it's reliability and performance. So let's walk through them. The way Encore TS deals with infrastructure and making it easy to use cloud infrastructure is by exposing infrastructure as declarative objects directly in your code base. So if you want to use a SQL database, you can do that with 1 line of code from Encore TS. You import this class, and then you define this object, and then you can just start using it to query the database. Same thing if you want to use PubSub. You import a topic, and then you define a class instance, and then you can just start publishing messages on it. Encore takes care of the rest. It parses the source code, it picks up all of these infrastructure definitions, and then it uses that to actually provision all of the infrastructure, both when you're working locally as well as in the cloud. And same thing goes for things like cron jobs and secrets and much more. Hopefully you get the idea. So really just you add this 1 line of code, you type Encore run, it will spin everything up when you're running it locally, and then you can just get back to shipping. And it creates this really, really fast feedback loop, as we'll see in just a moment here. And as you can see, when you type Encore run, it will parse and analyze all of the source code, and then it will spin up all of the infrastructure like databases and PubSub. It will run all of the database migrations and so on. And other parts of the product is things like you get built-in architecture diagrams, which really capture like, okay, how does this whole system work? And what are the different parts? So you can have multiple backend services, each with their own databases and PubSub topics and so on. And this is really the understanding that Encore builds up of your system. And then you have other things like there's a built-in API Explorer where you can quickly make API calls to your API endpoints. There's built-in observability for distributed tracing. And there's also built-in API documentation where what's really unique about Encore TS is you can define your API using normal TypeScript types, and they are then automatically picked up and understood. So you get built-in API documentation that just works. And the third pillar is reliability and performance. So one thing is the type safety aspect of Encore TS, where if you define a currency as USD or euros, and you try to pass in Danish crowns, you get an error because Encore TS has built-in validation. And secondly, when it comes to performance, it's really best in class, especially once you start doing validation. So we're talking hundreds of thousands of requests on a single instance. And how is this possible? It's possible thanks to a high performance Rust runtime that is actually powering all of the request serving. So the way it works is you have this node process, which then spins up the Encore Rust runtime. The Rust runtime receives the incoming HTTP requests. It parses them and validates them. And only when they have been validated are they passed over to the Node.js JavaScript engine for execution. And whenever this wants to make something like a database query, that goes over through the Rust runtime over to your cloud provider's infrastructure. And this means that the JavaScript runtime itself only operates on business logic. It doesn't deal with sockets, it doesn't deal with parsing incoming requests, and the Rust runtime, which is handling all of that, is fully multi-threaded. And that brings a massive speed up because the JavaScript event loop can really focus on only doing that, like running your business logic and nothing else. So with that, let's actually do a live demo. And instead of showing you this, we'll just do the demo instead. So I will switch sharing over to my full screen instead. Here we go. Okay. So we'll start here in the terminal. This is very simple project. Not very creative perhaps, but this is a to-do list application. It doesn't really matter because what we're really showing is the simplicity by which you can build systems with Encore TS and Vercel. So what we have here is a very simple backend with a single backend service and a front end, which is a React application, and we're going to spin them up and we're going to have them talk to each other. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the backend folder. This is where we're hosting our Encore application, and we're going to type Encore run. And I should actually, since I was preparing some work before, I should reset my database first. Cool. So now our backend is up and running. To do that, all you need to do is type Encore run, and it will figure out everything that's needed. In this case, that's a database, and then it will start everything up. And it will start it up on port 4000. Next, we're going to go to our front end, and we're going to run npm run dev, and this will start the front end. Now the front end will talk to the backend, and everything is up and running. So let's open this up. And as you can see, it's a very simple application. We can say you can hit save, and now we have a to-do item. I can hit done, and that's basically it, right? If I go back here to, this is what's called Encore's local development dashboard. Here you can see that what I just did, it made a bunch of API calls to the backend. So we can see the first time that this API call happened, there were no to-dos being in the response because there were no to-dos. We can see database queries, we can see how long it took, and then we created a to-do, and that executed an insert in the database, and we got a response. And the next time when you do a list, we get the to-do back. So this is fully working front and back end working together. The next part of the local development dashboard that we have is the service catalog. And here you have all of the API endpoints that the system defines. You can click on them. You can even call them directly from here. We can even create to-dos here. And if we go back to here, we refresh, we can see that we now have a to-do. The next part that we have is the infrastructure page. And here you can see all of the infrastructure that the application has, as well as architecture diagrams and things like that. All of this is live updated. So if I ever want to do something, like let's say that I want to add a pub subtopic where I say every time when a to-do is created, I want to publish a message on a topic. I might go in here, I might find the create endpoint here, and I might add a well, that will definitely work. And then I'll say create topics, and I will say this is a to-do. Like that. Oh, is this the wrong object? No, it's fine. Just need to do this. Why is my editor so confused? Oh, there we go. Okay. Now, in order to publish to this, I would just do created publish. Now, if I go back here, it will the backend will reload. Oh, I'm missing a from. That's why it's confused. And now we have a pub subtopic. So that's really how easy it is to add cloud infrastructure and deploy it. And if I do this and then I say I can do this, where I just say, okay, I will push to this GitHub repo. And I head over to this repo. We can see that this commit has started building. And this is now integrated with both Encore and Vercel. And this is super powerful because it means that any changes that I make to the front end will automatically deploy to Vercel. Any changes I make to the back end will automatically deploy to Encore. And we can head over to the Encore website to see this. So this is the Encore Cloud dashboard. And here we can see that this is now, it's actually setting up this pub subtopic that I just created. So now that it's deployed to Vercel, we can go in here. We can head over to Vercel. And now this is actually running in the cloud. So we see that this is hosted on Vercel, demo Encore with Vercel. And then we'll create a to-do. And now we have a to-do item here. If we go back here, we can see that what I just did, it created a live trace in Encore's Cloud dashboard. We can see that we both did the database query, and then we published the to-do to a pub subtopic. So all of this is working together, and that's all very good. But what would be even cooler is if we can get preview environments to work together, because that means that if you're used to working with Vercel, you have this really powerful feature with preview environments, right? Where you can build a feature and then test it, get feedback on it, and then once you merge it, then it's live to all of your users. But what if you could get the same experience, but with the backend changes as well? And this is where the experience gets truly magical. So that I don't have to build it from scratch, I've already prepared this actually, but we can walk through the changes just to demonstrate. So what we have here is I actually used Cursor to make this change about just before we set this up. And basically what the changes involve are very small changes, but it's adding a to-do item, a due date column to the database. And then it's adding a due date to essentially all of the database queries. So it's to the get, to the list, to the actual to-do interface, as well as the create and update endpoints. And similarly on the front end, it's adding a due date to the front end, and to the list view. So it's all very straightforward. So let's say, and then and of course we get a merge conflict, but that's fine. Let us accept the, we'll do the incoming change. Now I will delete the publish just for clarity's sake. Okay. So let's actually go in here, mark that as resolved. Okay. So now, if I had everything working, if I tap Encore run, now if I go in here and I'm working locally, we can see that now we have due dates when we're running locally, but we want to try this in the cloud, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a pull request using the GitHub CLI, and this will create a pull request. And here we can see that Vercel is starting to build the front end, create a preview environment. Encore is building the backend, and as soon as the build is done, it will also create a preview environment. And if all goes well, we'll be able to see them working together to have an end-to-end full stack preview environment. So we'll just give this a minute because now the build is completed. And we can now see that Encore has created a preview environment. It is now setting up the infrastructure for that preview environment. And obviously this takes a few seconds longer than Vercel because it's actually setting up a bunch of backend infrastructure. Vercel, as you know, is super fast, but still just a matter of 1 minute or so. So we're just waiting for the instance to come online and the backend to be up and running. And then we'll be able to check it out. There we go. So now it's actually running. Cool. So that's been marked as successful. Now we have a preview environment here. Let's head over to the traces so we can see that stuff is happening. We'll go over to Vercel. We have our preview environment here. And let's actually view that. And now we can see that this is now running in Vercel. We'll say that the due date is today because, well, we're doing it live. And now we have our thing, we have our due dates. So this is our new feature. We can mark this as done. And if we head back here, we can see that what I just did, if all goes well, it generated a bunch of traces here, including the due dates in the API itself. So with that, that's the demo. Hopefully that all makes sense to you. It's a bit of a whirlwind tour of Encore, the backend framework, together with Vercel for truly full stack preview environments and end-to-end development. Happy to take any questions.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thanks. Thank you so much for running through that for us. It seems like Encore has a lot of really cool features. What I'm most interested in would be like how well Encore plays with the other tools in my stack. So I know you like it's really great that it integrates well with Vercel. You showed a little bit about the logs and traces. Am I able to integrate those with some third-party observability platform like Datadog?
Yeah, so there are built-in integrations with that. I mean, we have to be careful to separate like Encore, the open source framework, which is compatible with virtually anything. It's just a framework. Just import it, whatever, deploy it wherever you would like, and then the Encore Cloud sort of automation platform. And there, it's like we have specific integrations with observability providers. So what that currently supports is Datadog and Grafana. But you can always, with almost anything, even though when there are parts that aren't, there isn't like a specific integration that we have built, you can still do pretty much anything. It's just a matter of you would have to do the work yourself instead of us automating it for you.
Okay. Yeah, I like having access to those levers so I can solve my own problems. You also showed there was automatic API documentation. Does that use OpenAPI? Or
So the way Encore works is it's more like TypeScript native. So we actually parse the source code itself. So the API documentation comes from the comments in your TypeScript types themselves. So to document it, you just write high quality code documentation, and then that gets picked up. There is an OpenAPI output where you can actually export this as OpenAPI for sort of compatibility with the whole OpenAPI ecosystem. But you don't have to do that. You don't start from the OpenAPI specification. You start from native TypeScript types.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's kind of what I was asking. Being able to export as OpenAPI just unlocks a whole platform of other integrations that you kind of get out of the box because everyone else supports that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Anshuman, you want to take the next question?
Yeah, I think I really loved that demo. What I have in mind is how does Encore work with like different sort of solutions for authentication and authorization? Because I think Vercel has and Next.js has a lot of integrations with like these auth providers, Auth.js and Clerk and Auth0, I think. So how would that play into like front end and back end with Next.js and Encore?
Yeah, so we didn't have time to show this in the in the whirlwind tour, but with Encore you can define what's called an API gateway, and that essentially is it sits in front of your actual backends, and it's processing the requests before forwarding them to if you're building like a microservices architecture. The auth gateway can itself have what's called like an authentication handler, and that will then get called in order to deal with authentication. And inside that, you can read any headers, you can read cookies, you can sort of process the request in order to authenticate where it's coming from, what the API token is, or whatever. And so, from a backend perspective, that's usually that's like where you draw the line is like, okay, we have this incoming cookie with a token. Let's figure out if that's like a valid token and who is the user who is making the request if you're like decoding a JWT or something. So it's super extensible. It works with all of the services that you mentioned. In our documentation, we have examples for most of those already. So you can just go there and really get like a very guided tour how to integrate it with Clerk or Auth0 or whatever you prefer.
Yeah, I think that is the way most of the developers would like it because I think Clerk and all of these external providers, they have very specific ways and I think more extensible ways. So would fit right into that. I think another addition to this question would be how does like Encore handles environment variables and secrets? Because for example, if my front end is using a variable or an environment variable that is shared with the backend, like how would that work?
Good question. I mean, it depends on how like what it's used for. The way Encore on the backend deals with sensitive information is through the built-in secrets management functionality. There's not currently a way to, in our cloud platform, there's not a way to like define environment variables specifically. But if there are environments defined, then if you're self-hosting Encore or whatever it might be, the open source framework, then you can of course read environment variables same as you otherwise would.
Okay, I think that makes sense. Jacob, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, so the Encore TS anyway is an open source project. How can people contribute to that? How like if people wanted to help work on the next Encore features or so on, or fix bugs or contribute there, where would they go to work on that?
Yeah, great question. I'm not good enough at marketing our own open source project. I should have had a big slide on this. But thank you for bringing it up. So if you head over to github.com/encoredev/encore, that's our Git repo. We also have, if you go to encore.dev, that's the website for the open source project. And there is, you can obviously find all of the contributors. You can find all the tutorials, all the documentation, as well as links to the GitHub project. In terms of ways you can contribute, it's everything from, from adding new features to fixing bugs to writing tutorials. More examples are always welcome. It's improving the documentation. We get a lot of good feedback that we have good documentation, but it can always be better because it's everyone comes into with like a different background, and what may be obvious to one person is very not obvious to the next person. So that's always helpful. Another thing you can do is share your experiences. So you don't even need to actually contribute by like writing code or anything. You can just share like, okay, I tried to do this and that I found that very difficult. It would be great if there was like an easier way to solve this problem. Just getting more feedback from the experiences of users is always valuable, because when you're sitting on the other side building something, you always forget what it's like to experience it for the first time. So lots of ways to help out.
Awesome. I think for our last question, the last here is what's next in your roadmap? What are you cooking up next? I did notice in your terminal when you fired it up, there's a little MCP endpoint there. Is that something new cooking?
Yeah, so we just shipped the MCP integration. I didn't have time to demo it, but essentially Encore comes with a built-in MCP server that will actually provide information about your own system to the LLM. So if you're building a bunch of backend services, the LLM can start to actually query them and like, oh, what API endpoints exist? How do I use them? It can fetch traces. It can look like what database tables exist and things like that. Just like understand the system that you're working on much better. So we're working on a lot of things when it comes to AI and large language models in general. We're also next up on the roadmap is for Encore TS. It's like better support for things that people have been asking for, like cookies. Handling of cookies has been like a big pain point that we didn't ship. So there's like a lot of those things. It's better support for TypeScript type information, and then we also just launched what we call Leap, which is like a more of like an AI product for building backends with LLMs. So a bunch of different things on our plates that we're super excited about, but those are like the main buckets that we're working on at the moment.
Cool. That seems like, yeah, it's a lot of really cool stuff. So people want to find you to learn a little bit more about what you're doing next. Where's the best place to reach you? Social media or website?
Yeah, so head over to encore.dev and there's a link to all of our socials, but the best place to reach us is on Discord. So we have a Discord community. We're super responsive there. And you can either you'll find the link on our website, encore.dev, or just do encore.dev/discord and you'll be redirected to our Discord community.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for coming into the call and doing this little demo with us. I'd like to, thank everyone else for joining, participating in the chat and community. We have another community session coming up next week on a Wednesday, June 12th, all about using the Sentry integration for Vercel to find and address performance bottlenecks. Until then, we'll see you in the community.